Are you struggling with some high-level bosses in old-school RuneScape like Vardorvis, Nex, or even some raids bosses? Have you found some silly YouTuber who keeps telling you that Vorkath is easy, but you're still struggling on the Money Dragon even after watching their guide? That's me, by the way. I'm the guy who keeps telling you Vorkath is easy. Hey everybody, it's Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today we're talking about entry-level bosses and how you can use them to learn general bossing mechanics and get good at PvM. Jagex recently added a few bosses to the game that are designed very well for getting you into bossing. There have been low-level bosses before, like the Giant Mole, which really only teaches you how to protect from melee. Scurious, the Amoxliatl, and the Royal Titans were all added to the game to teach you some of the base mechanics of combat in old-school RuneScape. This mostly consists of switching your overhead prayers, switching the gear that you're currently wearing, moving your character to stand on the correct square, and then I would toss in dealing with multiple NPCs at once, which is similar to moving your character to the correct square. In this video, I'll discuss how and why these bosses will prepare you for higher level bossing, but it won't necessarily be a guide for each of these bosses, as I have already released those and they are linked in the description if you're looking for more of a deep dive on the gear and the inventory and all the little details for how to kill these bosses. I am going to be starting with Scurious the Rat King. Scurious is a giant rat located in the Varrock sewers. He can be fought with fairly low combat stats, like 60 plus in your melee stats. That would be attack, strength, and defense is a good starting point. Scurious can heal up while it's eating at the cheese piles, which means there's a bit of a DPS check. In other words, if you're not doing enough damage, you may actually never kill the boss. Again though, 60 plus in your melee stats, and then a decent weapon like a dragon scimitar, then that shouldn't be an issue. During the fight, Scurious will use melee attacks when it is focused on you, and it will use magic and range attacks when it's eating from the cheese pile and during enraged phase. You can react to the magic and range attacks as long as you turn on the correct prayer before the projectile hits you. On a quick side note, this mechanic is different depending on what monster you're fighting. For some monsters, you can turn your prayer on when their projectile is still on the way to your character. Like here at Scurious, I can turn on Protect from Magic when I see the blue attack, as long as I click it before it actually hits my character. For the majority of monsters in the game, that's actually not the case. If you're fighting an Aberrant Spectre, you do have to Protect from Magic before the Spectre starts using its attack. So the moment that the Spectre's animation for a magic attack begins, you already had to be protecting magic, or it could still deal some damage. To know if you can or can't react to a monster's attack with your overhead prayers, you either have to just test it out yourself or look up a bossing guide to know beforehand. At that point, it's just kind of memorizing which monsters this is the case for. In most monsters in the game, you can't react with overhead prayers, but for newer bosses, including Scurious, it is more common that they give you a chance to react to them. When Scurious uses its melee attack, which is not a projectile of any kind, you do have to have your prayer on before it uses the attack. Overall, this means Scurious gives you a lot of practice dealing with your overhead prayers, which is very important for bossing. Scurious also spawns in a bunch of little rat minions. You will always one-hit them when you attack them. You do want to protect from melee from them though. They do hit through prayer a little bit, but they hit even harder if you're not protecting melee. Overall, it's important to quickly kill them as they will be draining your health. You can also one-tick kill them if you're using one of the rat bone weapons after you get a Scurious spine drop. The rat will occasionally jump, causing some rocks to fall from the ceiling, and it'll always drop some on the square that you're standing on. In general, there'll be shadows around showing you where the rocks are falling. You just have to move your character to dodge it. When you get into the enraged phase of the fight, you have Scurious using magic and range, dropping rocks from the ceiling, which you're moving your feet for, and spawning in those minions that you need to hit. It is pretty intense for an entry-level boss, but none of these things in the fight have a very high max hit, so even if you're messing up a lot, you can often out-eat the damage you are taking. And even if you don't, dying at Scurious is not very punishing, as it is easy to get back to Varrock, and if you're wearing cheap gear, you don't have to pay very much at your gravestone. Best of all, Scurious is great for combat XP. If you show up to Scurious with 60 melee stats, 60 range, and 60 magic, you can use the bone weapons to train all three skills to 70 or 80 plus, which is a lot of XP, but it's going to be at a good pace for those levels, and you're going to be mastering some PvM mechanics. I highly suggest starting your boss and grind by just obliterating some Scurious. Next, we have the Amoxliatl. This is the final boss in the Heart of Darkness quest, one of the quests in the Varlamore region of the map. You can repeat the final boss fight as many times as you want after you've completed the quest. The majority of the fight is just moving your character away from the ice spikes that spawn under them, similar to like the rocks falling from the ceiling in the Scurious fight. You just gotta move for this. You'll often have to find a square that doesn't have a shadow, or rather the blue ice indicators, and click on that before the ice hits you. You do have to be much faster at the Amoxicliatl than you do at Scurious, but that is good for practice. The ice maxes out at hitting a 22 if you don't move in time, so it's not extremely punishing to make a mistake, and you should be able to out-eat that with like swordfish or lobsters even. It does have a special attack that spawns in unstable ice that you can one-tap, similar to how you one-tap the minions at Scurious, and the other special attack turns off your prayers, which you need to quickly reactivate, usually by using your quick prayer orb. So there's no gear switching, no prayer switching according to the attacks, mostly just like reacting to click on the ground or the unstable ice. I generally refer to this stuff as footwork when I'm talking about bossing mechanics, just clicking on the game screen to move your character in some way, whether that's on the ground or on an NPC. The profit per hour here should be a little bit better than Scurious, but still very low in terms of bossing moneymakers. If you spend a full night or two just mastering the Amoxicliatl though, you are going to improve your ability to move your character around and react to your prayers being shut off, and you should make enough money to upgrade some weaponry, like a dragon scimitar up to an abyssal whip. At the Amoxicliatl, you should be using a crush weapon, so maybe we're talking like Sarachnis Cudgel, upgraded to a Zami Hasta or some dual Maquahedals. Definitely plenty of money to set yourself up for the final bosses on the list today. The Royal Titans. The Titans are two bosses, Branda the Fire Queen and Eldrick the Ice King. They're located in the Asgarnia dungeon, and they have no official requirements to fight, other than being a member, I guess. You will want 70 plus in your melee stats and range to get started, and then 75 magic is very helpful during the fight, so it is highly suggested. In general, bossing is just going to go way better for you if you get your stats up. The minimum levels that I tell you to get here, they really are like kind of minimum. Like you could kill the bosses with even lower levels, but you're always going to have a better time with higher stats. Places like Scurious, training your Slayer, Nightmare Zone, Sulfur Naguas, those are all good places to go and get some good combat XP. The giant bosses are fairly strong, and you do have to fight both at once. This encounter can be done in solos or in duos. It's a much simpler fight with a duo partner. That being said, it's also a lot better practice for PvM if you try and solo these bosses as well. The fight focuses on gear switching and attacking multiple NPCs. You don't need to switch your prayers, and the bosses won't ever turn them off, so you just can't protect from melee the entire fight. When attacking the Titans, you want to melee them whenever you can get close enough, but then sometimes you have to range them when they step far away or when they force you to step far away, and then they spawn in elementals, which are weak to magic, so you have all three combat styles to use. There are a lot of strategies and gear setups to try and minimize the amount of gear switches you have to bring with you. This is good for when you're first starting out the bosses. There's going to be a lot going on during the fight, so simplifying your switches is going to help you focus on the actual mechanics of the fight and surviving, and it will give you more inventory space for food and prayer potions. One of the main purposes of the fight, though, is to help you practice those switches. Bringing more gear to switch into and going from range to melee, or vice versa, will increase your DPS, giving you more kills per hour and more GP an hour. It's also going to make you better at switching your gear for other bosses, which really is the entire point of the video, huh? To practice your bossing mechanics. Oh, I'm starting to get it. Lots of high-level bosses do require gear switching, like raids, Nex, Nightmare, even stuff just like Tormented Demons does have you using multiple attack styles, so getting comfortable with your switches is solid for bossing gains. Not every boss requires a lot of gear switching. That's the case for really any individual mechanic though, as there are a lot of different bosses in OSRS. The Royal Titans have a much better loot table than Scurious or the Amoxicliatl, but they're definitely more difficult than either of those bosses as well, so that is fair. This is a pretty good jump towards some like stronger bosses. You can pull over 1 mil GP an hour here, and two of their main drops are the Deadeye Prayer Scroll and the Mystic Vigor Prayer Scroll, which will upgrade your Eagle Eye and your Mystic Might prayers. This is pretty big for range and magic DPS, and some defense with them too. So if you take the time to master this fight, get really good with your gear switches and taking out those elementals really quickly, likely you would have upgraded your prayers at that point and made enough money to have a fine setup for bosses that make even more GP an hour, like Zulrah or Vorkath or the Phantom Muspa. Jagex really has nailed it when it comes to these entry-level bosses. Scurious is a perfect place to start, giving you great XP an hour and practicing some prayer swaps, and the intensity of that enraged phase as well. The Amoxicliatl is a little bit better GP an hour, and it's really good for working on your footwork, and then the Royal Titans are a bit more difficult, great for learning gear switches and hitting smaller NPCs that have spawned, plus you can fight it with your friends. The goal of this video is to break down how these bosses are good for learning bossing bossing mechanics. Next, I will be working on a video that breaks down the mechanics specifically a little bit more, like your prayer swapping, how your character moves, and just the timing and general like a how bossing combat works video, and I will be linking that video in the description when it is uploaded. If you enjoyed this video or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and best of luck on your bossing grinds.